Good morning, this is Chris
and Megan
reading the Society News for Friday the 14th of December 2018. On Tuesday the 18th of December, the swimming group are swimming at the waterside pool in Ryde. The pool is closed to the public whilst the group swims. There are male and female volunteers to help you get in and out of the pool, as well as lifeguards to ensure your safety. To join the swimming group, please call the Society first to notify us of your swimming ability. You need to register with the office at Millbrook House first to be able to swim with the group.
And then on Wednesday the 19th of December, the weekly coffee morning will be held at Millbrook House this week from 10:30 a.m. There will also be our low vision drop-in between 10 a.m. and 12 noon, a weekly event to allow you to view and try the low vision equipment we have at the Society without the need for an appointment. The book group will be meeting at the Lord Louis Library between 1:30 p.m. and 2:30 p.m. We discuss the last month's book over tea and coffee and hand out the book for the next month. The books are available on CD or USB. Please contact Laura Jasper on 522205 for more information, or email members at iwsb.org.uk.
On Thursday, the 20th of December, the Thursday social group will be enjoying their Christmas lunch. This group usually meets from 10:30 a.m. till 2 p.m. You can knit or just have a chat, then later in the afternoon volunteers come in and read to the group from different topics. If you are interested in joining this group in the new year, please contact Laura Jasper on 522205 or by email members@iwsb.org.uk.
And on Friday, the 21st of December, the Striders group will not be meeting this week. Instead, they met last week on the 14th of December for their Christmas lunch. If you would like to join the group in the new year, then please call 522205 for more information.
Any other news? The Melodic Choir, who are singing at the Short Story Writing Awards ceremony, will be singing at Northwood House on Sunday the 16th of December from 1:45 for a 2:15 start. Tickets are available from the box office at Northwood House, www.northwoodhouse.org/events, or 293642. Tickets in advance are adults £8, children up to 16 years of age £6, and under 4s are free. The proceeds from these events are being shared between Sight for Wight and Northwood House. The Short Story Writing Competition. On Monday, the 17th of December, the Short Story Writing Competition Award ceremony takes place at the Riverside Centre, Newport. Doors open from 6:30, with the ceremony starting at 7 p.m. Not only will the winners be announced and the winning stories heard from recordings by Joe Brand, Adana Minghella, Melvin Hayes and Kate Weston, but there will also be entertainment from the Melodic Choir and Huxley Magician. There's also a tombola and raffle with your chance to win £100 cash, plus many other fantastic prizes. Entry is free, so come along and enjoy the fun. The Sight for Wight office at Millbrook House will be closing at lunchtime on Friday the 21st of December for the Christmas and New Year period. The office will reopen on Wednesday the 2nd of January 2019. The first Thursday social will be Thursday the 3rd of January. The first Tuesday swimming group will be Tuesday the 8th of January. The first Wednesday social will be Wednesday the 9th of January, and the Wednesday coffee morning will restart on Wednesday the 2nd of January. Dress for Less Christmas and New Year closure. We will be closing at 1 p.m. on Saturday the 22nd of December and will not be taking any new items on that day. We reopen on Thursday the 3rd of January. Thank you for your support during the last year.
And Sight for Wight Activities. Here is a reminder of the activities that Sight for Wight are offering in the new year. A 5-week yoga course is to start on Tuesday the 8th of January at 2 p.m. This follows on from the popular yoga taster session we held earlier this year. The course will cost £6 per week and is being held at Millbrook House. If you wish to join the course, then please call to register with your interest by Thursday the 20th of December. A new coffee morning will be starting on Thursday the 10th of January at the Old Smithy Coffee Shop in God's Hill from 10:30 a.m. till 11:45 a.m. The coffee morning will take place on the second Thursday of each month. Refreshments are available to purchase direct from the coffee shop. I have sampled their cakes and they are delicious. We hope to see you there. We will be visiting West Wight alpacas on Friday the 1st of February for a guided tour, meet and greet with the animals, followed by a visit to the cafe. The cost will be £5 plus an additional £2 for the minibus if required. The closing date to register your interest for this activity is Friday the 11th of January. We will be holding a chair yoga taster session on Tuesday the 19th of February, which is a less strenuous alternative to the yoga session we held last year. The session will be at Millbrook House and will cost £6. The closing date to register your interest for this session is Friday the 25th of January. To register your interest for all the above activities, please call Laura Jasper on 522205 or email members@iwsb.org.uk.
And now for the scaffolding news. To follow are a list of known footway obstructions for works including scaffolding, hoarding, and also details of skips, cranes and cherry pickers. Cows and East Cows. Current scaffolds. 93 High Street Cows. Scaffold up within hoarding until the 23rd of December. Cows Library, Beckford Road, Cows, until the 13th of December. Island Sailing Club, High Street Cows, also around the corner in Watch House Lane, until the 16th of December. 91 Upper Yarborough Road, East Cows, until the 18th of December. Current hoardings, 93 High Street Cows, until the 23rd of December, and new skips, 19 Bernard Road Cows, until the 18th of December.
And the Newport area. The Cancer Research Shop, 116 High Street, Newport, until the 12th of December. That's gone. The Cash Recycle Shop, 140 High Street, Newport, until the 17th of December. Chantry House, 30 Pyle Street, Newport, until 22nd of January. And 39 Key Street, Newport, until the 17th of December. And the Savoy Court, Town Lane, Newport, until the 13th of December. Current skip, 32 Victoria Street, Victoria Road, Newport, until the 12th of December, which is gone, and 38 Highfield Road, Newport, up until the 16th of December.
And now for Ryde, Bembridge and Seaview. Current scaffolds. Pierview Court, St Thomas's Street, Ryde, until the 20th of December. J.D. Weatherspoons, 41 to 43 Union Street, Ryde, until the 23rd of December, and 21 Nelson Place, Ryde, also until the 23rd of December. Current skips, 32 Fallen Road, Bembridge, until the 17th of the 12th. St 21 to 23 St Michael's Avenue, Ryde, is on hold, and 2 Spithead Close, Seaview, until the 24th of December, 90A Monkton Street, Ryde, until the 17th of December, and also 6 Winton Street, Ryde, also the 17th of December.
And then on to Sandown and Shanklin. Current scaffolds. Premier Inn, 1 to 9 Esplanade, Sandown, up until the 15th of February 2019. The Toymaster, 103 High Street, Sandown, up until the 24th of December. Sandown Library, 119 High Street, Sandown, up until the 24th of December. Sandringham Hotel, Esplanade, Sandown, up until the 20th December. 4B Station Avenue, Sandown, up until the 26th of December. And Vilmar Dorkin and Ver Maper Cottages, Church Street, Newchurch, up until the 21st of December. And then current hoardings, Premier Inn, 1 to 9 Esplanade, Sandown, up until the 2nd of February. And junction of St Boniface Road, Arthur's Hill, Shanklin, up until the 1st of May 2019.
Oh, sorry.
And then the Ventnor area, current scaffolds, corner of Trinity Road and Madeira Road, Ventnor, 1 Boniface Road and into Trinity Road, Ventnor, up until the 4th of January. And Jobson's Farm, Newport Road, Knighton, up until the 21st of December. And current skips, Seascape, St Catherine's Road, Ventnor, up until the 19th of December. And the West Wight area, it appears there's none at present. Right, this week's In Touch calls for VAT-free e-books. Due to a long fought-for change by member states to EU legislation, the UK government has now discretionary powers to abolish VAT on all e-books. The CEO of the Publishers Association says that no VAT would help people on low incomes, including some visually impaired people for whom these are essential. Reporter Tom Walker looks into why Ofcom ruled that a London shock jock overstepped the mark when he derided a visually impaired man for wanting to be the first person to train with a guide horse in the UK. Tom Walker also asked Alan Tweddle, a candidate in the recent local elections, whether a grant for aspiring visually impaired politicians, which is to be reinstated in 2019, would have been of use to him. In your pocket, a one-buttoned smartphone will now be able to video call with a volunteer assistant. Roger Wilson Hines tells why In Your Pocket and Be My Eyes app are teaming up. And the presenter for this was Peter Wight, producer Lee Kumutat, and reporter Tom Walk.
And now, the Isle of Wight County Press for the 14th of December 2018. The headlines: Body found inside blazing building. A rural home was destroyed by fire this week, claiming the life of a person inside. A body was found in the remains of a Porchfield property following the blaze on Wednesday night. Police said yesterday they were contacting next of kin. Further details about the death will not be made available until the family have been informed. Fire crews from Newport, Ryde and Freshwater, police officers and paramedics were called to the fire at Corfe Road between Porchfield and Newtown shortly after 8:30 p.m. on Wednesday. The single-storey, timber-framed property was well alight when they arrived and quickly destroyed by the flames. Fire service investigators were due to arrive from the mainland yesterday, Thursday, to determine the cause of the blaze. A police spokesman said, "We were called by our colleagues from the Isle of Wight Fire Service to reports of a fire at a residential property on Porchfield Road shortly before 8:40 p.m. on Wednesday, December the 12th. A body was found inside the property. We are still in the process of contacting next of kin. Investigations at the address are ongoing, but at this stage the death is not being treated as suspicious." The road was closed overnight on Wednesday between Coleman's Lane and White Oak Lane, while firefighters made sure the scene was safe. Ryde Fire Station tweeted, "It is with huge sadness to hear a body has been found in the property fire we attended last night. Our thoughts are with the family."
And now, schools improve but still lag behind. Isle of Wight secondary schools have continued to improve but remain near the bottom of the National League tables. Concerns have also been raised about the lack of progress made by students with special educational needs and disabilities. Ofsted's annual report, published last week, revealed island schools remain in the bottom of 20 nationally, ranked 133 out of 152 schools. Just 56% of island secondary students attend a good school, the lowest number in the southeast. No island secondary schools are rated outstanding. The best in the region was Surrey, with 93% of secondary schools are rated good or outstanding. Ofsted Regional Director Chris Russell praised island schools, which had seen vast improvements. He said, "We have seen schools such as Cowes Enterprise College turn themselves, but admiring the success is the fact that we are not doing well enough for children who need extra support, including those on free school meals and those with SEND, S-E-N-D. Children on free school meals are not catching up fast enough with their classmates. This is a sticking point, and while there have been some improvements, the education gap between children from poorer backgrounds and their peers remains wide. Children with SEND are also not always receiving the support and help they need. Last year, almost a third, 29% of secondary schools were rated inadequate. The number has now fallen to 11%. On the island, just over half, 54% of students reach the expected standards in key Stage 2 reading, writing and maths. The Isle of Wight topped the table for exclusion rates in secondary schools at 12%. Councillor Paul Brading, Isle of Wight Council Cabinet Member for Children's Services, said that he was pleased with the improvements highlighted in the report. He said, "All children deserve a high-quality education, and I am determined to ensure all schools on the island are recognised as good by Ofsted. This was our plan, and we remain on track to deliver this." Just 4 years ago, 18% of schools were just judged inadequate, and only 51% were judged to be good or better. Standards of attainment are now better, or in line with national averages in some areas, and are improving faster than the national average in others. Overall, 77% of all island students attended a school rated good or outstanding. Dominic Coughlin, Secretary of the Isle of Wight National Education Union, the NUT section, said, "Ofsted deplores the delay in the identification and support of children with special educational needs and disabilities, but refuses to identify the decimation of school authority funding, which has led to the crisis in SEND, S-E-N-D, which is so catastrophic for children and their parents. The true test of a society is how we look after the most vulnerable. Without the desperately needed funding, we will not be able to properly provide for children with SEND."
And now for other items of news in the county press. A sign of the times at Christmas lights show. If you report a burglary on the island, there are no police officers to come and deal with it. But use a capital letter in the wrong place and they are down on you like a ton of bricks. That was the response from one anonymous source after road crossings warning signs outside Terry Ramplin's Christmas lights display at his Long Lane home were removed on Monday because of a grammatical error. The signs, erected free of charge by HSS Hire, had been put in place to warn drivers about people crossing the busy Newport Road to see the lights during the festive period. However, the word crossing had a capital C and was reported to the police for being incorrect. Highways contractors removed the original signs on the request of the police, and new ones were put in place the next day. The unnamed source was one of several people who spoke to the county press, incredulous at the removal of the signs. Terry, who has put on the light show for 19 years, said, "It has taken me 6 weeks to put the display up, and we will have hundreds of people here enjoying it, raising money for charity. People speed past, and the time of night they start flooring it is precisely the time of night when families come out with the children to visit us. Yesterday they came to take the road signs down after the police said they were wrong. I couldn't get to the bottom of it, but it seemed like there was a capital C where there shouldn't have been one. The signs are here every year, and last night the speeds definitely went up when the signs weren't there. I just feel it was better to have some signs than none, especially with the amount of children that visit." A police spokesperson said, "Traffic enforcement advisors assist partner agencies to ensure all signage on public highways is road legal to maintain the safety of road users and pedestrians. In this particular case, a number of issues were identified with the signage on display, including a need for more detailed information to be added about the potential hazard ahead. This matter has since been resolved.
And now the Council asks for help with budget. The Isle of Wight Council has urged people to come forward with money-saving ideas as it looks to slash 5.5 million from next year's budget. Islanders have been urged to take part in an online survey on the Council's proposals and suggest alternative ideas to help balance the books. Councillor Stuart Hutchinson, Cabinet Member for Resources, said, "We're very mindful we have to make some tough decisions. That's why we've published our budget proposals 4 months in advance of the deadline to give people every opportunity to have a say. We need to be very prudent with our financial planning, but we also want to make sure our budget can still support our community to help us build a brighter future for the island." The Council said 95% of savings would come from efficiencies across all services and income generation. Council leader, Councillor Dave Stewart, said, "My experience so far is, when called upon, people on the island will step forward with thoughts and ideas, and I encourage everyone to give us their support." The short online survey is available at www.iow.gov.uk. The deadline is January the 23rd, ahead of the budget setting meeting in February. Comments can be emailed to budget@iow.gov.uk. A public meeting on the budget proposals will be held in January, and more information about the budget proposals can be found on the Council website.
Campaigners say consultation fundamentally flawed. Travel costs review row. Health campaigners have slammed a consultation on free travel for cancer and kidney patients, claiming the Isle of Wight has not done enough to publicise it. The Council has launched a review of its cross-Solent travel scheme, which provides financial support to patients travelling to the mainland for chemotherapy, radiotherapy or renal dialysis treatment. The Council is considering axing the scheme to save £60,000 a year. Island residents have been invited to take part in a consultation on the proposal, but the Isle of Wight Save Our NHS group raised concern that just 200 paper copies were initially made available. The number was subsequently increased to 1,200. Volunteers from the group visited GP surgeries and libraries to ensure the documents were widely circulated. Christine Lightbody from the group said, "In some instances we found none were available. In one library they were actually out of sight completely because they'd been put in a drawer." Age UK Isle of Wight has also requested the consultation deadline be extended. The request was refused because the Council said it needed the survey results ahead of February's budget meeting. Christine said, "We are distraught. Such an important issue has been hidden in plain sight with little or no publicity except by people sharing on social media." She said the Council had a duty to publicise it properly. Branding the survey fundamentally flawed, Christine said, "It doesn't even recognise family or those escorting users and is simply designed in favour of the Council. It is disgraceful such a consultation should be done in the first place. If we cannot look after our most sick and vulnerable, then what's the point of this administration's existence?" The Council was contacted for comment. Island MP Bob Seeley has asked the government to consider subsidising travel for patients undergoing treatment on the mainland. In a letter to Health Minister Steve Brine, Mr Seeley said it was unfair. The Isle of Wight was the only UK island with no subsidised ferry travel to support locals accessing healthcare.
And now an article on homeless children on the island. Hundreds of Isle of Wight children will be homeless this Christmas, new figures have revealed. Currently, there are 265 homeless children on the Isle of Wight, a rate of 1 in every 95 children, according to Shelter, a housing and homelessness charity. Although homelessness legislation in Britain means children should never have to sleep rough, this can happen in extreme cases. However, the majority of homeless children are living in temporary accommodation such as hotels and B&Bs. Although they have a roof over their heads, they are still officially classed as homeless because it is not a permanent home and they can be moved out at very short notice. In 2013, there were 217 homeless children on the island, meaning in the past 5 years there has been an increase of 22%. Studies have found children who have been homeless are more likely to suffer from mental health problems even after being rehoused. The Shelter report said, the trauma caused by living in temporary accommodation and sofa surfing can worsen mental health issues, leading to a development of problematic behaviours. Overall, there will be an estimated 131,000 children homeless in Britain this Christmas, 3% higher than last year. The highest local rate was in London, with 1 in 11 children in Westminster facing a Christmas in temporary accommodation.
Man tasered in domestic incident involving firearm. Armed police tasered and arrested a man in Freshwater this week following reports he had a gun. Specialist officers descended on a property at Edinburgh Road on Monday morning, where a taser was used to detain a 50-year-old man. He was arrested on suspicion of making threats to kill, but released without charge the following day. A spokesperson said, "We were called at 8:46 a.m. to a report of a domestic incident involving a firearm. We can confirm a taser was discharged in order to detain the man safely at the scene. He has subsequently been released without charge and will face no further action." Paramedics were also called to the scene to treat the man, as he had taser barbs in his back. The armed police were spotted preparing for the operation at nearby Church Place outside All Saints Church and the Red Lion pub. One resident told the county press, "All these police cars came speeding past as we were walking along the causeway. A few minutes later we saw a lot of police outside the pub. At least one of them was carrying a gun. It looked like a big rifle. You don't see that in Freshwater very often."
Now, Camp Hill on offer for just £1. Camp Hill Prison has been offered for sale to the Isle of Wight Council for £1, but the government is still struggling to sell it. The Prisons Minister, Rory Stewart, said he was keen to sell the former prison site to the council for new housing during a Justice Select Committee hearing. On Tuesday's Today in Parliament Radio 4 programme, the BBC reported Mr Stewart telling the committee, "I'd be happy to pay the authority £1 to have it." A spokesperson for the Isle of Wight Council said, "The council is undertaking the necessary due diligence on the former Camp Hill prison site, which will assess any risks and liabilities prior to considering any arrangements for bringing it forward as a regeneration opportunity." The prison once held more than 500 inmates before it was closed in 2013. A question mark has hung over the site for some time, with the possibility of regenerating it. A draft regeneration strategy released by the council in July described the site as suitable for residential, commercial, community, social infrastructure space.
Woman slapped teenager and bit mother. Slapping a teenager on the cheek, then biting her mother and a police officer landed a Newport woman in court. Nina Hoskins, 33 of St James's Street, admitted assault occasioning actual bodily harm, assaulting a constable and failing to surrender when she appeared before the Isle of Wight Crown Court last Friday. She also admitted 3 offences of theft. The court heard police were called to the Hideaway Cafe in Shanklin on September the 9th about an unrelated matter. As people in the cafe waited to speak to officers, Hoskins struck the teenager's cheek, causing her to stumble. The teenager's mother took hold of Hoskins so she could not get away from police, and the two fell to the ground. She was bitten on the neck by Hoskins in the struggle. A police officer who tried to restrain Hoskins was also bitten on the hand. The theft offences all related to incidents of shoplifting, the court heard. Representing Hoskins, Adam Norris said, "She is enormously sorry and disgusted with herself." She was sentenced to an 18-month community order with 40 days of rehabilitation activities and told to pay a surcharge.
And a thief stole gold from an elderly man. A thief who stole gold and silverware from an elderly man and took £10 from a pub's tip jar has been jailed for 3 months. Appearing at the Isle of Wight Crown Court last Friday, James Mobley of Spring Gardens, Ventnor, admitted 2 counts of theft. Rod Blaine, prosecuting, said Mobley, 38, had been drinking at the Old Fort Seaview when a member of staff saw him eyeing up the tip jar. The court heard he asked her to call a taxi and took 2 £5 notes when her back was turned. Mobley initially denied taking the money, but handed it back when he was told the pub had CCTV. Mr. Blaine said Mobley then made his way to the home of an 84-year-old, where his then-girlfriend worked as a live-in carer. The court heard she let him in and told him to wait in the living room. Police, alerted by staff at the Old Fort, arrived at the property. Mr. Blaine said police searched Mobley and found a gold cigarette holder, a gold-plated notebook and other gold and silverware from the room hidden in his pockets, bag and trouser leg. Representing Mobley, Barry Arnott said his client's girlfriend had let him in as she was concerned for his welfare and called his mother. Mr. Arnott said Mobley was distressed at the time and had been taking medication that had not been prescribed to him. The court heard Mobley had been diagnosed with a personality disorder, severe anxiety and depression. Following his release from prison for a previous offence, Mr. Arnott said his client had hoped he would receive more mental health support. Mr. Arnott said Mobley had begged his support worker for help. Judge John Price said, "You stole items from an elderly gentleman, items which were very important to him." Mobley, who had a long criminal record, was also fined £250.
Poignant lighting up for loved ones. Around 400 people attended a Light Up a Life service to remember their loved ones at Mountbatten. Carols were sung, readings and prayers were said, and the Mountbatten Remembrance Tree was lit with lights dedicated by people across the island in memory of those who have died. After the service, people gathered in the John Cheverton Centre to enjoy a glass of mulled wine and a mince pie. Everyone who had dedicated a light also had their loved one's name commemorated in the Book of Remembrance. There was also an opportunity for people to write their own message and add it to the dedication tree in the building. Among those attending the service were Charlotte Humphrey and her daughters Maisie at 9 and Tilly 6 from Ryde. Charlotte said, "Attending the Light Up Alive service gave my family a time to come together and remember my mum." Shirley Batchelor, "It was a beautiful, touching service which my children were able to be part of. Being able to dedicate a light on the tree to their nanny and writing a message on the tree for her in the John Cheverton Centre where my mum received fantastic support was lovely."
And now, houses renovation boost. A major renovation project is set to begin at historic Northwood House in Cowes, thanks to a £50,000 government grant. The Department for Communities and Local Government is paying for most of the work through the Coastal Revival Fund, which is administered by the Isle of Wight Council. The money will enable the full restoration and preservation of the Rotunda entrance building. Rosaline Cullen, chair of the Northwood House Charitable Trust Co. Limited, said, "This project is an important part of the ongoing work by the charity to ensure the house and the park remain assets for the people of Cowes. Northwood House's rich and diverse history and Grade 2 listening make the preservation and protection of the property an ever-increasing challenge, but this award significantly helps us to preserve it for the future. Work will involve significant roof repairs to prevent water seeping in, ventilation improvement, and the detailed restoration and decoration of the columns, dome, and surrounding facade. The project will include cleaning and refinishing the historic stone floor, repairing the damage and wear caused by the passage of nearly 200 years and many thousands of visitors and guests attending celebrations in the house." Tim Wander, the charity's project manager, said, "The project would finally address long-standing and serious issues of water ingress that is causing structural damage within the main entrance to the house. This essential work will preserve and protect this unique part of the house through which all visitors, staff and tenants pass every day, and will continue to improve the fantastic interior in line with the objectives of this charity. The work will also include continuation of the award-winning restoration programme in the main house that was part funded by the Coastal Revival Fund in 2016. Once completed, the work will bring about a significant structural and aesthetic upgrade."
And it's goodbye from Chris
and Megan.
And may we wish you a very happy Christmas and a healthy and happy
New Year.
Good morning, everyone. This is the County Press for December the 14th, read by Barry and
Madeline.
And we start with a letter from A. Cromwell of Sumner Road, Farnham. "A big thank you to everyone who has saved and sent me used postage stamps over the past 12 months. To any new readers, don't throw them away. It only takes a few seconds to tear around the stamp from the envelope, so please get into the habit of saving them for the Lullaby Trust. Funds raised from their sale support this charity to maintain life-saving research into sudden infant death syndrome, which still shatters more than 200 families a year in the UK. It also helps them to provide support for bereaved families, including their CONI, Care of the Next Infant scheme, and to promote expert advice on safer baby sleeping. Also, Little Lullaby aims to tackle high SIDS rates among young parents through peer support and reduce isolation. It can mean the difference between happiness and heartbreak for countless families. Your contributions, however large or small, are always welcome, as are original used ink cartridges.
Why do we fail to invest in our own people? From Peter Mitchell of Ventnor. In 1973, fresh out of college, newly married and penniless, we bought a house in Chepstow with a mortgage from Chepstow Council. Chepstow had the wisdom and foresight to invest in young people. The repayments were far less than we would have paid in rent. Since then, Kent County Council has lost all its investments in Iceland in the great crash of 2008, and now we learn the Isle of Wight Council has borrowed £19 million to invest in property in Manchester and, ironically, Kent. One wonders how many house loans could have been made with that money, how many lives could have been changed, how many families given the start that we enjoyed, why we fail to invest in our own.
And a letter from Nick Mims of Ryde. I should like to point out a small omission in your interesting looking back 100 years ago for December the 7th, 1918. It was Captain William Mims whose death was mourned at the time. You may also be interested to know his eldest son, Walter Ormond Mims, was injured at Gallipoli, and letters were published in the county press, November the 6th, 1915, praising his conduct during frontline action in the campaign.
Don't let swans starve over winter. From Roger and Jenny Crates of Freshwater. It was wonderful to read the account on the County Press website about the message from the Queen's Swan marker, David Barber, encouraging families to continue feeding swans bread, especially in the winter. He said there has been a great deal of press coverage in recent months regarding the Ban the Bread campaign, with its supporters saying people should not feed swans bread on the grounds it is bad for them. David Barker says quite categorically this is not true. They have been fed bread for many hundreds of years, without causing any ill effects. Bread has become a very important source of energy for them, supplementing their natural diet and helping them survive the cold winter months when vegetation is very scarce. It is untrue that bread causes angel wing deformities, and on the contrary, malnutrition increases their vulnerability to avian flu and other fatal diseases. Mr. Barker has been receiving reports of underweight cygnets and swans wandering into roads in search of food, and the County Press readers may remember the family of swans in the summer who were leaving the river here at Freshwater and walking down one of the main roads in search of food. Thankfully, after checking with the Swan Helpline at Windsor and finding out the heatwave had killed off the river weed and they were starving, we began to feed them swan pellets and brown bread 3 times a day. And the 3 cygnets have grown into strong, healthy young swans. Their parents are also well and strong. But if we hadn't intervened, they might well not have survived or be facing the winter months in a very weakened state. It is a great privilege to help wild birds in this way. What a great pity that the RSPB did not alert the public to the fact the heatwave had affected river vegetation so badly. Their suggestion that lettuce and potatoes can be fed to swans sounds unlikely. We have tried lettuce on several occasions, and they simply don't eat it. So God bless everyone who cares enough to feed the swans. Yes, brown bread is much better, and also swan pellets, which can be bought from local stores or purchased online.
And this is from Mrs. Mew, of Lake. I have been caring for people for years. Perhaps because of my age, won't be here for much longer. I love the island, and so many retirees from the mainland want to come here, and I don't blame them. We appear to be building so many flats for retired people, and we have not for the infrastructure to cope with it. I admire the doctors, nurses and all who work with the NHS and thank them for staying here under such difficult circumstances. It's very difficult for doctors, nurses and all staff to deal with older people like myself, with so many complex medical needs. Perhaps turn our thoughts to building accommodation for nurses, etc., with families to come here, with help to rent or even buy at lower deposits or rental cost, on a contract to work for at least 5 years. I know it is difficult, as I can see it will affect schools and child services, but it would perhaps encourage younger people to come here, growing a better variety of care for doctors, consultants and nurses to stay here. I know, or perhaps I will be criticised a lot, but we have one of the largest areas of elderly in the country. Caring for people is one of the most important things in life.
Distracting voters, from J. Gibbons of Wight. In my mind's ear I can hear a Bob Seeley adviser now. We need to distract the voters from your support of Mrs May's scheme. What I would suggest is attack the ferries. No one likes the ferries. Everyone wants to live in a pleasant place, but no one wants to pay for it. Hence the questions very much publicised in the county press on the 7th of December. And the first thing that strikes me is the arrogant tone. Have we reached a state where MPs can demand answers from us? Or is it only from businessmen? He also omits to say that he will do with the answers. For instance, one of the questions is, when do Wight or its shareholders expect to pay UK tax on its earnings? Suppose the answer is, according to the rules laid down by members of Parliament or their servants, no tax is due. And according to the rules laid down by members of Parliament, we are required to act for the long-term benefit of our shareholders while abiding by the laws of the land, including maximising our total return after tax and other expenses. We would be at fault if we paid more tax than is due. You are a member of Parliament, you make the laws and we will abide them as far as we can understand them. We would be certainly better off if there were more ferry companies and more competition, but the answer is surely not to pee off the ones who are supplying the service, but to encourage and facilitate ones who are not. I would like to offer Mr. Seeley a more appropriate windmill to tilt at. In the early days of limited companies, the directors' remuneration was set or approved by the shareholders, and if they were no good, they were out on their ear. These days, directors' pay is settled by remuneration committees, staffed by, well, directors. Whose idea was that? The law was changed by MPs, and as a result of their action, the people at the top pay themselves astronomical sums, and no one can do anything about it. Perhaps our MP would like to get his teeth into that one. That's his job.
And from Julian Critchley, Chairman of Ireland Labour Party. I note the article which reported Conservative MP Bob Seeley had written to Wight to question it about its record of paying, or not paying, tax in this country. It is of course quite right to question companies who avoid paying their fair share of tax through the use of tax avoidance mechanisms. It is perhaps more surprising such a question should come from a Conservative MP, a loyal supporter of a Conservative government which has spent 8 years enabling companies to avoid paying tax in ways such as this. This isn't the first time Mr. Seeley has used a letter to create the impression of action on the island, while loyally supporting a government which does the very reverse in Westminster. Since 2010, the Conservatives have cut corporation taxes for companies such as Wight from 28% to 19%, while tax credits and other benefits for ordinary families have been slashed to pay for that giveaway to big business. The Conservatives have also consistently voted to block any attempt to tackle the offshoring of profits made in this country by companies in order to avoid paying fair tax in the United Kingdom, including blocking measures at the EU level, which were designed to make it easier for companies to collaborate to prevent such tax avoidance. Perhaps most surprising is Mr. Seeley appears to have forgotten in November and December of 2017 he personally voted in favour of excluding overseas activities of UK headquartered banking groups from the bank levy, precisely the sort of activity which enables the offshore tax avoiding actions of companies such as Wight. Mr. Seeley may be unaware of the contradictions between the positions he takes in the media on the Isle of Wight and the positions he votes for in Westminster. I believe an increasing number of islanders are only too aware of these contradictions. Nobody seriously believes the Conservative Party, which is bought and paid for by rich men, is going to do anything to force those rich men to pay their fair share. For that, we will need a Labour government. That moment can't come soon enough.
And now looking back 100 years ago on December the 14th, 1918, the island's support for electoral candidate Captain Douglas Hall was growing. The county press described Captain Hall's reception as like pre-war enthusiasm. His main rival, Sir Godfrey Baring, had suffered over his support for Lloyd George. And several island soldiers returned home after being held as prisoners by German troops. Many were never taken to Germany, but held just behind enemy lines, forced to work. They were subject to very cruel treatment.
And 75 years ago, December the 18th, 1943, three brothers from the island had the good fortune of meeting in the Middle East. The three sons of Mr. and Mrs. A. Wright of Brading were all serving in different branches of the forces when their paths crossed. One was in the Railway Department, another in the Royal Navy, and one in the Royal Marines. An island man caught and imprisoned in North Africa escaped home for Christmas. Lieutenant R. Rickett of Freshwater wrote, "I was about 100 miles away from British lines. I wanted to come home for Christmas, so it was worth taking some extra risks. We stayed in caves and mountains and lay low when we saw the Germans. We crossed the Sangro and Trigno rivers and then crossed British lines."
50 years ago, on December the 7th, 1968, Plessy Electronics Group welcomed the Third Sea Lord and Controller of the Navy, Admiral Sir Horace Law. He was given a demonstration of the AR-1 radar before visiting the 45-foot satellite site, both used regularly by the Royal Navy. The director of the Plessy site then discussed the future of naval technology with the Admiral. 25 tons of hay and a stable block were destroyed in Ryde. Firefighters from Ryde and Newport spent hours at the Upton Riding School damping down. Julie Smye, who runs the school, said it was a double blow as the hay had been fed to her horses and was bought just a few weeks before, after a similar amount was destroyed in a rick fire.
And 25 years ago, December the 10th, 1993, an island couple's selfless devotion to their son Joe won them Parents of the Year. Paul and Lynn Baker moved to the Isle of Wight to give their son, who has Down syndrome, the best start. They were presented with the National Award by TV doctor Hilary Jones at a ceremony organised by Parents magazine. An anonymous prankster delighted wheelchair-bound Gina Full when she returned from a shopping trip. During her 2-hour absence, some unknown well-wisher had decorated her house and put a Christmas tree on the roof. Her daughter, Faye Rendell, said her mum found it hilarious. It had really brightened her up.
10 years ago, on December the 12th, 2008, parents were alerted by health chiefs after pupils at 2 Isle of Wight schools caught the norovirus. Children at Lake Middle and Sandown High Schools came down with the highly infectious bug. The cases were investigated by environmental health officers. A couple were angry about a huge increase in the cost of caring for their pet lemur. Bob and Jean Horwood were hit by a £300 bill, up from £50 from the Isle of Wight Council for a dangerous wild animal licence. Bob said It's not like she's a tiger. We're not running a zoo. And 10 years ago, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang arrived with Santa. Phil Cromblehome and his granddaughter Emma Matthews, Santa advertising his weekends at Thompson's Nursery in aid of island diabetics, and Hope Giles came over to say hello.
There we have Wight memories. Local unsung Isle of Wight cycling pioneers is the headline. Brian Greening takes a look at the local pioneers of cycling on the Isle of Wight. Here he discusses three men whose contribution to island cycling is too often forgotten. Years ago, sport played a great part in the lives of our ancestors. For the aristocracy, it included steeplechasing and cockfighting, the attraction being that they chose sports on which they could wager money. They also engaged in fox hunting, largely because with all those events, it always ended with a good meal and wine at a local hostelry. For the working class, however, it was less glamorous, indulging in such sports as football, cricket, boxing and running races. It was not until around 1870 that cycle riding began to gain popularity, and very soon cycling clubs began to be formed. Locally, the Isle of Wight Cycling Club came into being in 1876. They, of course, never had to compete with motor cars, but the roads would have been simply compressed gravel and had more potholes than today, while horses that at the time ruled the roads were prone to bouts of intemperance. This was the same year that it was reported that in September some members of the rival Vectis Cycling Club, no doubt wishing to outdo their local friends, set out from Ryde, travelled across to Portsmouth, and we are told cycled to London on the same day. One of the early island cycling pioneers was a man named Mr. Mowbray Weber, whose father lived at Chatham House at Apley Ryde. This young man went to America in 1885 and brought home 13 prizes. That included a trophy for winning a 10-mile cycle race at a place called Springfield, Massachusetts. This would have been quite some adventure, as it would have meant journeying that distance by boat, probably involving a round trip that ran into months. Upon his return to the island, he was met by three stalwart cycling friends who chaired him down the pier to a carriage that had been used previously by the Crown Prince and Princess of Germany, and he was thus transported in style to the family home, led by the local volunteer band playing "See the Conquering Hero." His club colleagues later treated him to a splendid meal at Ealf's Hotel. Another local leading light in the years that followed was Albert Milton Cheverton, who became the island cycling champion on 10 occasions. In 1892, he won the local hill climbing race from the bottom of Cedar Hill to the top of Alvington Chute, a distance of 1,100 yards in a time of 3 minutes 33 seconds. A local doctor later condemned the event as being dangerous and a physical strain on those who took part. The annual race meeting of the Isle of Wight Cycling Club for 1896 was an event that was held at the County Ground Shanklin. Train travel was advertised and bicycles could be transported for a return journey by paying just a single fare.
Entry to the ground for spectators was just sixpence. Trains from Cowes, Newport, Ventnor and Ryde St John's would stop at the ground, allowing passengers to embark and disembark. There were only two events, the 10-mile championship and a 3-mile handicap. The first prize in the 10-mile championship was a gold medal, and a silver medal was to be awarded to any of the competitors who completed the course in under 28 minutes. Due to the inclement weather, not one of the participants achieved such a time, the winner being the intrepid Albert Cheverton, who could only finish the course in 30 minutes 15 seconds. The 3-mile handicap race was won by H.W. Mims, who had a 100-yard start, whilst the by now weary Albert Cheverton, who started off scratch, struggled in fourth. Mr. Cheverton was to later have cycle shops in several towns across the island, his premises in Newport being at 139 High Street, that older readers will recall was later to become Medina Cafe and Bakery. In 1910 he was sadly involved in an accident at Basingstoke, as a result of which he lost a leg. Thereafter he rode a specially adapted bicycle to meet his disability. He died in 1937 at the ripe old age of 75 and is buried in Newport Cemetery. Prior to this, around 1900, the same premises in the High Street had been another cycle shop run by the Witham family. James Witham had had an accident too, while still at school, that resulted in his being confined to a wheelchair for the rest of his life. But he used his experience of disability to go into business, around 1900 selling at first self-propelled invalid carriages, before branching out into the bicycle, motorcycle and the sidecar business. He died in 1922, and he too is buried in Newport Cemetery. Just 3 men who are largely unsung, but men who contributed much to the history of cycling locally and the enjoyment of their island colleagues.
And now we have my view, Cat James, in praise of tourism superstars. If you've ever crossed the Solent by Red Funnel's car ferry, you will undoubtedly have enjoyed the performance of Dancing Jim O'Reilly, Visit England's tourism superstar of 2018. Vehicle marshaller Jim bobbed, gyrated and booled his way into pole position in this year's search for the unsung heroes of the staycation tourism industry. For the past few weeks, the hunt was on to find the next individual who goes out of their way to make the Isle of Wight an unforgettable visitor experience. On my travels around the island, usually gorging myself at the county's cafes and restaurants, I could make an enviable list of front-of-house staff who make their patrons feel warmly welcome. However, don't bother firing up the valves on the internet to submit an online application for your favourite school crossing patrol warden. Are there any left? Or whistling postie, steadfastly bearing letters and bearing knees, whatever the weather, as the nominations have just closed and, alas, were only open to folk who work for a tourism business or organisation. In my little Twitter echo chamber, I could nominate dozens of people who, like me, celebrate the idiosyncrasies of the Isle of Wight, promoting them on social media for our own and visitors' pleasure. For example, taking joy in the perennial sightings of Ryde's town crier, Steve King, as he ceremoniously fronts various carnivals and parades. Another homegrown madcap institution in the island's streets and pubs throughout the summer is Ventnor Comic Jazz Band, spellbindingly keeping the faith of departed band leader Jim Skimbo Wight. This ragtag tribe of musicians' motto is allegedly all the notes not necessarily in the right order. Right at the niche appeal end of the spectrum is the light-hearted campaign to usurp Bude Tunnel as the country's top supermarket structure, with Ryde Tesco Extra's own Zone D, trolley park. The affectionate appreciation of what is effectively a brittle plastic tube in an otherwise featureless car park is spearheaded by a local animator, that Drivel Steve. What started out as a bit of laugh on the TripAdvisor Bude Tunnel, the only tunnel Bude has to offer, is open to the public free of charge. Walk from the Sainsbury's car park to Crooklets Road completely undercover, has an enviably high tourist ranking, and even has its own Christmas light display this year. Google it and prepare to be awed. To be honest, Zone D is a particularly underwhelming challenger, but it gives a few of us white nerds some pleasure. I'm sure you can think of your own examples, But these are just a few of the folk on my radar who, although an enthusiastic advocates of the Isle of Wight, will not qualify for tourism superstar status, at least not officially. Nominations for Tourism Superstar for 2019 closed on the 12th of December. However, the punk exhibition See Wight Catwalk feature right continues at Key Arts until February the 9th, 2019.
And Jim Gibbons, A Wooden Chain That Links Me to the Past. And there's a picture of Jim's wooden chain made from a single piece of timber. And he says, observe the illustration. Let me say at once, it is not a good example of its kind. These things are usually made from hardwood and sanded and polished to perfection. This was just a spare piece of 2x2 softwood, roughly done with furry surfaces and non-identical links. But it's mine, all mine. Some 40 years ago there was an article in the Practical Mechanics magazine. Remember that, do you? You must be nearing my vintage. I had no skills or training in any of the activities it showed, but the writers were skilled in making you think, well, perhaps I could do that. Anyway, this article described the process, with pictures of converting an inert piece of wood into something flexible and wondrous, and I was immediately hooked. Not least of its attractions for me was the fact it was longer than the original piece of wood. If I shaved more substance from the inside of each length, it would be longer still, and no glue or fastenings were involved, merely the cutting away of unwanted matter. The article showed how to make not just the links, but a ball within a cage and a swivel. I decided to have a go, not to make a work of art or a thing of beauty, but just to see if I could make a few clearly disconnected, yet just as obviously linked links. Having done it, I couldn't bear to throw it away, and it has followed me from house to house. Wood carving and whittling is an age-old tradition in many parts of the world, probably wherever there are trees. Welsh carved spoons are a marvellous example, and it would not surprise me if there is not a cottage industry in this island producing items which would make me green with envy. Missing monkey puzzle tree. In September 1959, Josephine and I were married, and without having done anything so prudent as booking ahead, came to the Isle of Wight for our honeymoon. The island was noted for it, as well as, of course, ordinary holidays. Ryde Pier on Saturdays, changeover day, filled with families waiting for the ferry, smaller vessels than now, and at least one paddle steamer. 1959 had been a long hot summer, and it was a warm evening when we left the steam train at Sandown and walked down Station Avenue looking for a place to stay. Although the season, as they called it, was over, we found a guest house to take us in Station Avenue. We knew we could always find it afterwards because of the very substantial monkey puzzle tree in the front garden. And as everyone knows, they last forever, don't they? Well, no, as it turns out. Some years later we walked down Station Avenue again, and lo, there it was missing. Not having made a note of the name of the house, we could not positively locate it again. One of my readers, who lives in Sandown, cannot help. The other, from Outer Ningwood, could not be expected to. Has any old Sandonian any suggestions? This month's quotation, what song is this from? And nothing in life should sever the chain that is round us now. Last month's, Blessed are the younger generation, for they shall inherit the national debt, was by Herbert Hoover.
We have Jack and the Beanstalk coming up on 23rd of December to 5th of January at 2 p.m. Tickets are £17.50 or £15. Family discount tickets available from the box office. And we also have Someone Like You, the Adele Songbook, Thursday the 17th of January at 7:30 p.m. Tickets £20. And the ultimate tribute to Jeff Lynne and the Electric Light Orchestra is a programme titled Hello Again, and that's on Friday 20th of January at 7:30pm, and the tickets are at £23 each. Also, Dracula is back again. Dracula the Bloody Truth is the title. Saturday 2nd of February at 7:30pm. Tickets £22.50. Age advice 8+.
Seaview will be a hub of community Christmas shopping on Tuesday. Retailers will be open until 8pm, and there will be deals for eating and drinking in the village as well. There will be carol singers in the street, and Father Christmas will be there at 6:30pm. The Magic of Great Music, presented by David Shirley, will be at Freshwater Memorial Hall Annex on Wednesday at 2:30. This week, New Year concerts in Vienna, Berlin and Dresden. The cost is £3 to cover hire of hall and refreshments. On Thursday, bazaars take place every week at Bembridge Village Hall from 9am until noon, with homemade jams, cakes, knitwear and other crafts on offer, and refreshments are available. The West Wight Christmas Choir will be holding a carol concert in aid of the Wessex Cancer Trust at Christ Church, Totland on Wednesday at 7:30. Mulled wine, spice cordial and mince pies will be served. Braden Community Choir meets on Tuesday at St Mary's Church Hall, High Street, Brading, from 7:15 to 8:45.
And now we have some additional news items. This one is headed Dead Badger Sparks Alert. A concerned resident raised the alarm after spotting a dead badger in someone's garden, but it turned out to be a cuddly toy. A woman travelling on a bus through Hook Hill, Freshwater, called the Isle of Wight Badger Trust after spotting the stuffed animal from the window. Trust volunteer Graham Lee, who lives locally, was sent to investigate and was relieved to find it was just a toy. He said, "We get 250 killed on the roads each year, so it's quite nice to find out it's not another one. It is quite a large toy, so I can see how someone mistook it for a badger." Graham said the cuddly badger, believed to be a dog toy, was left in the garden for the owner to reclaim.
And how to avoid the scammers this season. Scammers love Christmas because they know not only is everyone spending much more money than usual, they can be stressed and in a hurry, and because of this their guard is likely to be down. Charity phishing. Be wary of emails from a bogus charity or ones that purport to come from a legitimate charity but contain a link to a scam site. Tip: if you want to give to good causes at Christmas, go through the charity in question's own website. Fake delivery emails. Beware of emails that purport to come from legitimate courier companies. These ask recipients to click on a link. When they do, they download malware or are taken to a scam site. Tip: check the sender's address to ensure it is a legitimate company and go to the company's own website to track orders. Mind your mobile. Fraudsters are becoming more adept at targeting smartphones. Look out for text scams and offers that come through a social media and instant messenger apps. Get in touch. Finally, if you think that you have fallen victim to a scam, contact your bank as quickly as possible. The Isle of Wight Against Scams Partnership would like to wish the residents of the Isle of Wight a very happy and scam-free Christmas and New Year.
A flasher who repeatedly exposed himself to women appeared before Island magistrates on Tuesday. Simon Powell, 44, of Terrace Road, Newport, admitted 8 charges of exposing himself between January the 9th and November the 25th. The court heard the offences took place at remote locations around Newport. One of Powell's victims said she had seen children playing nearby. Representing Powell, Barry Arnett said a number of the victims were women walking their dogs. He said there was no suggestion children actually saw Powell exposing himself. He is very remorseful and has already made an appointment to see his GP, said Mr. Arnett. He has lost his good character, and there will be repercussions. The case was adjourned for sentencing to the Isle of Wight Crown Court on February the 1st.
Long Lane Star of Christmas Lights Tour. People across the island are enjoying a unique festive tradition thanks to Southern Vectis. The bus operator is once again offering its Christmas Lights Tour, taking passengers on open buses to see the island's very best illuminations. And centre of all the attractions is the Long Lane home of Terry and Sue Ramplin. Many people ride our Christmas tour buses year after year, and Terry's spectacular display in Long Lane is a particular favourite among our festive passengers, said Richard Tildesley, General Manager of Southern Vectis. Terry goes to a tremendous amount of effort, with each year's display surpassing the last. His home is one of the island's most impressive displays, so we're delighted to be making another donation to help fund replacements for the thousands of bulbs that make the Long Lane illuminations so spectacular. Light Supremo, Terry added, we've been turning our home into a lights tradition every Christmas for almost 20 years. We switch them on, weather permitting, from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. every night until December the 31st, and we couldn't do it without the help of local businesses such as Southern Vectis. It's a huge challenge to keep the display going each year, and I'm delighted we're at the centre of the Southern Vectis Christmas Lights Tour in 2018. The Christmas Lights Tour operates nightly from either Ryde or Newport up until Sunday, December the 23rd. It lasts for around 3 hours, and we stop off along the way for mince pies, hot drinks and other Christmassy surprises, said Mr. Tildesley. So many people return year after year because it's the traditional start of festive celebrations for them. Our drivers love the fact people look forward to taking the trip. It's a wonderful way to start the season.
And make sure you sweep your chimney. That was the advice this week following a fire in Ventnor. 2 fire engines, an aerial ladder platform and a fire officer attended a blaze which broke out at the Ocean View Road property shortly before noon on Wednesday. The road was closed for much of the afternoon. An Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service spokesperson said crews were alerted to the chimney fire, which then spread to the roof rafters. Firefighters used a hose reel chimney kit and small tools to extinguish the fire. Posting on Twitter, the fire service said, you can prevent this from happening by getting your chimney swept on a regular basis, at least twice a year if you burn logs.
Concern voiced over fire cover on the island. A mainland fire crew were called to the island last weekend while crews tackled a kitchen fire in Pan. A crew from Newport and a crew from Cowes were called to Royal Exchange, leaving the island without any fire engines on standby. A pump from Hampshire was sent to the island to provide cover. Chair of the Fire Brigade Union, Pete Moorhood, said he was very concerned about the levels of staffing on the island. Last month it was announced 7 firefighters have had their temporary contracts terminated, with fire crews across the island boycotting a training exercise in East Cowes in a show of solidarity. Mr. Moorhood said, it's very concerning when there are not many appliances on the run, and it seems to be getting worse. If the appliances are not on the run, it means they can't be sent to fire calls. There is always a risk when we do not have appliances available. Mr. Moorhood said there were only 2 full-time appliances available at the weekend, and retained crews were often unavailable. We can never guarantee retained crews will be available.
And Seeley backs Prime Minister in vote. Isle of Wight MP Bob Seeley said he was not surprised the Prime Minister defeated a snap vote of confidence in her leadership held in Westminster on Wednesday night. Earlier in the day, Mr. Seeley announced his support for the Prime Minister ahead of the vote. The vote was defeated by 200 votes in favour of Mrs. May to 117. Speaking to the county press after the vote, Mr. Seeley said he hoped the party could now get on with delivering Brexit. He said, "We've got to get on delivering Brexit in the best way we can, both for the people of Britain and the people of the Isle of Wight." He added it was disappointing a third of his Conservative colleagues had chosen to vote against Mrs. May. However, Mr. Seeley said he believed Mrs. May's deal could deliver Brexit, so long as she gets more reassurance on the Irish backstop issue.
Dredger crew member taken to hospital. A crew member on board a Spanish dredger off the island's coast suffered a suspected stroke, prompting a rescue operation. The Bembridge RNLI lifeboat was called to assist the 94-metre vessel Coast La Luz, anchored around half a mile northeast of the station at around 10 a.m. on Saturday. A lifeboat spokesperson said a crew member had suffered a suspected stroke and needed to be transferred to hospital. The transfer of the casualty, who didn't speak any English, was very quick as he was able to walk. He was taken to the Camber in Portsmouth, where they were met by an ambulance. The lifeboat Alfred Williams returned to Bembridge by 11:15 a.m. The incident was the first shout for new crew member Steve Jones. And that's all we have time for today, so it's goodbye from Madeline.
And goodbye from Barry. We hope you have a very nice weekend.
This is the BBC.
This is In Touch, the magazine programme for people like me who are blind or partially sighted. I'm Peter Wight. Thanks for downloading this week's edition. Good evening. Fairer and easier access to information is our theme tonight. Could we, for instance, soon be paying less for our digital books? And a new way to get help with things in the world around you without battling with a smartphone. We hear about a new information partnership. But first, VAT has never been the most popular of taxes in the world, mind you, which ones are. But ever since its introduction here in the 1970s, there's been a consensus that it won't be applied to books and newspapers. Don't tax knowledge seems to be the principle. But that principle doesn't extend to digital books. And now the Publishers Association is arguing that this is unfair to people on lower incomes, including visually impaired readers, for whom digital offerings such as electronic texts and audiobooks are essential. They say that the government can, as of last week, do something to change the VAT status of digital downloads due to a change in EU legislation. Well, Stephen Lottinger is CEO of the Publishers Association and he joins me from London. Stephen, first of all, just explain the tax position at the moment. Where does VAT apply and not apply when it comes to things like books?
On print books, both newspapers, magazines, books and journals are currently zero rated for VAT, so VAT is not applied. But for digital products, so ebooks, audios, if you have a newspaper subscription, for example, all of those will be currently having an additional 20% of tax applied to them. As of almost a week ago, the European Union has provided discretionary powers for all member states, and we are still a member state. We would also have this power after we left, obviously, to be able to remove VAT on digital products.
And how much is the government making from this element of VAT?
So currently we believe, on the calculations that we've put together, that around about £210 million goes into the Treasury revenues coffers each year. But about 55 million of that is coming from public institutions. So it's circular money. It goes out via public funding to places like universities, but then comes back in again. So our best estimates are around about £150 million.
But why would you think the government would want to give up £150 million for what is perhaps something which it thinks is a growing income, potentially?
Because there's a very important social principle as to why the government hasn't taxed reading, learning and education in the past. There was an acknowledgement from a very early stage that the government shouldn't be seeking to provide barriers to people to having access to this information. And clearly, cost and an additional tax is a potential barrier to people being able to do that.
That sounds very noble, Stephen. But is this really about visually impaired people and people on low incomes, or is it just about selling audiobooks cheaper and therefore making more money for your authors, which is not a bad thing, but isn't that the reality of the situation?
I think some of the major beneficiaries would be the blind community and, as you said, also low-income groups. But yeah, I wouldn't deny that actually I want everyone to benefit from this. I believe there's a very basic principle at stake here. And I should remind people that VAT is a consumer tax. It is paid by the consumer. So this is not about publishers being able to pocket an additional 20% that they're paying. So it's about reducing prices to consumers. And of course, over time, we want to grow the number of people who are reading books. And I personally have no embarrassment having that as part of our goal.
But as an association, you haven't always been quite so wedded to the idea of easy access for visually impaired people. I mean, you opposed something called the Marrakesh Treaty, which would have made the exchange of books between countries easier. There's an inconsistency there, surely.
So I don't think we opposed the Marrakesh Treaty. There were
you
concerns.
opposed its ratification.
There were concerns. We didn't oppose its ratification either. There were concerns specifically around what's called the commercial exception, the question about whether or not if a book is already commercially available, whether or not it should then be other copies made. But we've gone through that process, and there's a common acceptance that we've had to learn as part of that. And I don't think our industry are in a position at the moment where we would oppose any aspect of the Marrakesh Treaty. It is being ratified. We're supportive of that. We have accessible schemes ourselves, which we work in partnership with groups like the RNIB to try and ensure that our overall ambition, which is to try and make sure that the same book is available at the same price at the same time for everyone, is reached as soon as possible.
Are we anywhere near that? We've been calling for that for about 20 years.
That is an entirely fair argument to make, Peter. I wouldn't defend the fact that it's taken far too long to get here. But there is a recognition and there's been learning on all sides. And I think I entirely acknowledge that aspects of that treaty development were fractious, but I think real progress has been made.
As I said, this is very much a growing potential income for the government. How do you read its attitude to this suggestion? Have you talked to the Treasury about it?
So we have. I mean, first and foremost, I would say this is a very tiny amount of government income. We're talking about 0.03% of the overall tax take, basically a rounding error in government terms. And yes, we have started conversations with the Treasury. This law is so new that up until now, all conversations have been hypothetical. And I would very much urge any of your listeners who are interested or groups that they're associated with to also talk to the Treasury, because they intend to undertake a consultation looking at this over the next few months ahead of the next budget.
We'll certainly keep an eye on that. Stephen Lottinger of the Publishers Association, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we stay with a couple of access stories which relate to our role in public debate. First, with talk of a possible general election hanging in the air, what looks like a change of heart over a grant to help would-be candidates who have a disability. Well, our reporter Tom Walker's been looking into that. Tom, there's new financial help for disabled people who are standing for election. So what's the background?
There was a similar scheme up until 2015, but the government says this new one is different. Only 10% of councillors have a disability compared with 20% of the population as a whole. The Enable Fund for elected office is going to be worth up to £4,000 per candidate.
And what's that intended to pay for?
The additional cost disabled candidates experience as a result of their disability, Peter. Things like transport, screen readers, braille, transcription, etc.
Now, you've been talking to a visually impaired man who stood in last year's local elections.
Indeed I have, Peter, yes. I spoke to Alan Tweddle, who stood for the Liberal Democrats in the Orpington area of Bromley. This is a true blue Tory area, and Alan knew he stood very little chance of winning a seat.
And what was his view of the new funding?
Broadly positive. He looked into the question of funding to help with the additional costs, but at the time there was nothing available.
I heard about the grant for disabled candidates and I was interested enough to research it just before I was standing. I thought that additional money would definitely help with the kind of difficulties that you have as a disabled candidate. I thought it would help with transport costs, particularly because, even in a small ward like mine, it's a large ward if you have to walk all the way around it. Not being able to drive means that taxi costs, all those kind of things, additional money would have helped with that, definitely.
So how did he cope with getting round, given that he had no extra financial help on this occasion?
Well, in Bromley, they have multi-member wards, so he was able to rely on other candidates to drive him round and help out at public meetings. Alan says, however, that if he was standing for Parliament, things would be very different.
Then I'd be looking at doing all these things on my own, getting to places where you want to canvass on my own, getting to local public meetings on my own. And that in itself is problematic. But even when you're at such things, as a blind person, you need assistance of finding your way around. Where am I? If I'm at a local meeting where there's a buffet, you need someone with you.
Alan Tweddle. And from a one-horse race to Mohammed Salim Patel's proposed guide horse. Now, Salim has a phobia of dogs and therefore he's been looking into the possibility of using a guide horse.
Indeed, Peter. I know you've been away, but you won't have missed the extensive coverage in the press of Ofcom's judgment on the rather derisory comments made by LBC Radio Steve Allen on this story. Guide horses are miniature and occasionally used in the United States and other countries. During his show on October the 1st, among other things, Mr Allen said,
"The guide horse for the blind man who's afraid of dogs. What if he's blind? Tell him it's a rabbit or something. I've never heard of anything so stupid. This is the blind man scared of dogs, hoping that a horse will guide him on his commute. Where are you going to take that, for goodness sake? You can't take it on the train, can you? He's a BBC journalist. What do you mean he's allergic to dogs? Well, don't give him a dog then. Just give him a white stick."
After a listener complained that Mr Allen's comments were discriminatory in relation to blind people, Ofcom carried out an investigation and ruled that LBC had breached part of the broadcasting code.
So how does Salim feel about what happened and what was said?
Firstly, Peter, Salim is very positive about the possibility of him having a guide horse within the next couple of years. In terms of Mr Allen's comments, Salim accepts that guide horses are a new concept and that it will take time for people to get their heads around the idea. Salim hasn't heard anything from LBC nor Mr Allen. He believes the comments amount to disability discrimination.
I am seeking legal advice to see where I stand and if this can be taken further in any other way.
What's your thinking on that?
I appreciate that comments have been made and Steve Allen as a presenter might have a certain technique or method, but at the end of the day, his comments, from a personal opinion, are disability discrimination, and I would have thought that his station would have at least got in touch to apologise or ask me how I'm doing.
And in their response to Ofcom, LBC accept, I think, that Mr Allen does indeed have a certain technique or method, to quote Salim. How's the radio station responded?
At the time of recording, we haven't heard anything from them. They did say to Ofcom that the programme is centred around Steve Allen's unique and acerbic take on the news of the day.
Hardly unique, I think, is a bit flattering. I mean, as shock jocks go, let's face it, they do tend to have a go at everybody, don't they? That's the style.
Yes. They went on to say his very brief commentary on the story had a total duration of less than a minute. They added that Steve Allen is aware that his comments may have had the capacity to offend. However, his intention was not to treat the blind community with insensitivity.
Tom, thank you very much indeed. And there's more information on how to have your say on that available online. Now, one of the more tantalising aspects of life for us at the moment is that high tech can open up all sorts of opportunities for us, many based on smartphones, but you do need to be quite adept to take advantage of them. So we were interested to hear about two projects getting together. We've talked before about Be My Eyes on the programme. That's where volunteers can help you by phone match clothes or find lost items using your phone's camera. Meanwhile, a device called In Your Pocket is a way of accessing some services like RNIB Talking Books and Talking Newspapers. It's a smartphone, but using voice commands alone. No need to grapple with a touch screen, which many people still find fiddly and awkward, me included. Well, now Be My Eyes will be included when you sign up for a contract and receive one. Roger Wilson-Hines, its UK director, told me more.
You open the box and you have a small smartphone and you hold it in your hand. It has effectively one button at the bottom of the screen. You press the button, you dab at the button and it goes beep and you say, read The Guardian, or where am I? Or in this particular case, Be My Eyes. And when you say Be My Eyes, you're through to the first volunteer who's helping you with your problem.
Now, I actually tried this, and as you know, because you were the person who kind of instigated me to do it, knowing exactly when to make your announcement, I found a bit difficult. I think I was a bit too slow off the mark. So is it as clear as you're actually making out?
You know, you need a bit of patience to learn anything new, especially us oldies, Peter. You know, we do, don't we?
We do. As things stand at the moment, what will this give you access to? Before we bring Be My Eyes into it, what is available?
A couple of 100,000 books. I don't know how many podcasts, but thousands and thousands of them. 113 magazines, 70 newspapers. Access, like I've said, to the time, the weather, to where are you in the street. Will that do? That's a good start.
What's the difference between what people have been doing in the past and what they will do if it's on in my pocket?
If you're techie and you know what to do, you can get to the app like you get to all the other hundreds of apps on your phone and you can make it work. If you're not techie, you can't. You're barred, you're locked out. If you buy in your pocket, then you open the box and you press and you start to talk. Be My Eyes is set up for you automatically, as are all the other things.
Roger Wilson-Hines of In Your Pocket. To get it, you pay a monthly rental of £22 or a one-off payment of £528. Hans Weiberg, he's founder of the free service Be My Eyes, told me more about how the cooperation between the two would work.
Be My Eyes is a super simple app that basically makes a live video connection between a blind person's smartphone and a sighted volunteer. 90% of our calls are inside the house and most likely in the kitchen where you are about to do some dinner or something and you have those two cans and you don't know what's in what can. And also turning on the washing machine or making coffee. These days making coffee can be quite complicated. But also navigating outside, finding the right doorbell to ring when you find the right door. Make sure that you are entering the right bus or something like that.
How many users do you think you have?
104,000 blind people across the globe. We have 1.8 million volunteers in basically any country in the whole world.
And how long might these contacts be?
90% of our calls are less than 3 minutes. And we have 15-second call. Have I set my oven to 200 degrees? Yes, you have. Okay, thank you very much. And it's just a normal thing. And you just want to make sure. But you will not ask your neighbor over to look at this. And that's the power that you can get so easy access to a pair of eyes. And you don't have to buy them coffee afterwards or anything.
Some people have naturally expressed worries about security. You know, you are inviting someone into your life for however small a time who you don't know. What are the safeguards?
I usually say it's just like meeting a person on the street. And you should not show your credit card to a completely stranger. And of course, never use it to decide when it's safe to cross the street, because you cannot have a person sitting in Chicago telling you when it's safe to cross the street in London.
So why have you decided to hook up with In Your Pocket?
All the people that are using Be My Eyes, they have to be able to navigate a smartphone and so on. And we all know that it can be kind of troublesome. And In My Pocket is taking care of all that. And it's a wonderful thing that we can now reach people that we wouldn't reach otherwise.
Recently, there are schemes which are commercial, but are in a way more like navigational aids and will almost follow you on a journey. Can you survive those, do you think?
We brag about that we have 100,000 users, but when we think about there is 250 million low vision or blind people in this world, so I think there's plenty of room for us and for plenty more apps that could join this field.
How do you manage to make it sustainable?
We have made a partnership with Microsoft and hopefully a number of other companies down the line. So now you can call a volunteer or you can call Microsoft support. Now they can actually see what's on the screen because the first thing support will ask you when you call them is what's on the screen now. And if the screen reader stops talking, you cannot tell them. But now you can use the Be My Eye to get this information. And the second thing is that Microsoft is paying Be My Eyes a monthly fee. So we help them help their blind customers.
Hans Weiberg. And that's it for this week. If you want more information about anything you've heard on the programme, you can call our action line on 0800 044 044 for 24 hours after the programme. You can email in touch at bbc.co.uk or click on Contact Us on our website, from where you can also download tonight's and previous programmes. From me, Peter Wight, producer Lee Kumatat and the team, goodbye.